Kelly Meggs convicted of seditious conspiracy.
During trial, prosecutors highlighted text messages showing Rhodes had wanted then-President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act, but had told members he was prepared for a civil war or rebellion in either case to stop the transfer of presidential power. A seditious conspiracy conviction carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports 3 other defendants were found not guilty of seditious conspiracy, but all 5 were convicted of interfering with an official proceeding. Defense attorneys say there will be an appeal. The Senate, by a vote of 61 to 36, has passed the Marriage Protection Act to write same-sex and interracial marriage into federal law. Arizona Democrat Senator Kirsten Sinema.
I look forward to seeing this bill move back to the House, where, as you all know, it enjoyed strong bipartisan support the first time it went through the House, and we expect it will see even more bipartisan support when this bill goes back to the House later this week.
President Biden has already said he'd sign the bill. The House is expected to vote Wednesday on a bill that would impose a settlement on the 12 unions representing railroad workers in the U.S. in an effort to stop a potential rail strike a week from Friday. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments Tuesday over a Biden administration policy halting the deportation of many illegal immigrants.
At issue, a 2021 Homeland Security Department policy slowing overall migrant deportations by prioritizing removal to only those who are considered a serious threat to public safety. Texas and Louisiana sue the government, arguing federal law originating in Congress requires mandatory arrest and deportation for those in the U.S. illegally. There are 11 million people illegally in the United States. DHS argues it doesn't have the resources to arrest, detain, and deport them all.
Fox's David Spunt reports the court's conservative majority appeared ready to order the administration to follow federal law, not the DHS policy. 16 days after 4 University of Idaho students were found stabbed to death, police have finally seized their cars.
Cops towing away 5 vehicles from the house where the bodies were discovered. Several of the cars believed to belong to victims. The day before, forensic investigators were seen recombing the off-campus rental and footage obtained by the New York Post. The 4 were each stabbed to death as they slept in their beds around 3 a.m. on November 13th. More than 2 weeks later, police have still not named any suspects. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
A Missouri man who shot and killed a suburban St. Louis police officer in 2005 has been executed for his crime. Kevin Johnson given a lethal injection. There's hopeful news about an experimental Alzheimer's drug. Researchers say lecanemab modestly slowed progression of the disease in clinical testing of 1,800 patients. 31% of them were less likely to advance to the next stage of the disease during the study. One of the researchers saying that translates to more time. The FDA could consider approving the drug as early as January. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Tailgaters are pretty familiar with the Second Amendment because I repeat this every day, putting everybody on notice that this show is about the Constitution, individual rights, freedom, liberty, patriotism, conservatism. So if that's what you're interested in, you are properly situated at this particular time of the day. If it's not what you're interested in, you are even more properly situated because you got a little catching up to do, but this is the place to do it. So we start out with Zemi Ikotny. Zemi Ikotny, my backwards bilingual play on words, translated literally, but Zemi Ikotny means press the meat. I turn it around so that it reads meet the press. And we make Chuck Todd try every time we go on the air because we're so much better than he is. It used to be that during Meet the Press, I would compare and contrast the editorial offerings of the two daily newspapers with my blue pencil in hand, mark them up for grammatical, English usage, and improper editorial theory mistakes. Having done that, weigh the two and award the better of the two, the coveted blue star, which never went by default.
You know, I have to take blue pencils off your Christmas list because obviously you're not using them.
Yeah, this looks like a lifetime blue pencil, doesn't it? This guy is going to be here 10 years from now, and I'll still be using the same blue pencil because it's so long since I've had to award the coveted blue star. But after we made the blue star one of the really important features of the show, the Daily News changed and started putting things on the editorial page that they called editorials, but really weren't. They were recast news stories, puff pieces, feel-good stories, things like guess what I saw on my way to work this morning. And the Post was the only game in town, but then the Post quit putting editorials on their editorial page at all. For about 3 months now, there have been no editorials in the Post. So Zemi Ikotny now consists primarily of me beating up on the Daily News for the horrible job they do and occasionally finding something else that I'll put in this slot that has editorial content. So here's the Daily News today. And this one, you'll see when I'm finished, it looks like the Daily News is trying to compete with Saturday Night Live. Comedy relief.
Oh, boy. It's a snoozer?
Our view, good governance requires public input, vigilance. Well, do tell. Your lawmakers in the final weeks of the 36th legislature are busy preparing for their last public hearings and sessions, processes that could see the passage of important bills that could help residents continue to make ends meet through the holiday season. Moreover, these final sessions should be watched closely as controversial legislation, including the Heartbeat Act, could make it to the session floor. The Daily News encourages every member of this community to step and be a part of the governmental processes that will no doubt affect our lives by testifying at public hearings and watching for outcomes of the legislature sessions. Today, constituents have the opportunity to let their voices be heard on two bills introduced to provide relief to taxpayers by extending the $100 a monthly power bill credit through April 2023. While both bills are geared towards supporting power consumers, their funding sources differ, details that matter greatly when it comes to responsible government spending. One bill authorizes the governor to utilize any funding source available. The other limits the expenditure to specific excess, unobligated tax revenues from fiscal 2022, in other words, the so-called surplus. On the surface, these deals are seemingly minute. However, as we move forward into the uncertain reality of post-pandemic recovery, we must ask ourselves what is the most responsible, effective way to support ratepayers. Yes, electricity is expensive, and $100 would go a long way for many families, but is giving the governor full authority to take $26.8 million from any funding source available, fiscally responsible, or financially prudent? Now, that's the first real editorial comment I've seen in months.
Right? When I saw that, I was like, yikes.
We believe that this financial hand-up for struggling families is noble, but having lawmakers explore other options that take into consideration the challenges that lie ahead outside of power rates and gas prices, we urge all of our readers to not just participate and testify on these matters, on these bills today, but to pay close attention to the moves our leaders are making every day. The days and months ahead will set the course for our economic stability. Stay connected to the stories we bring you daily. I got to make a mark there. The stories we bring you daily, and remain vigilant of what's happening in our government. Well, there's a kernel of a real editorial in there, just a kernel. And if they had expanded on that kernel, they were working towards a blue star. But they spoiled it by writing themselves out of the editorial. Good governance requires public input, vigilance. They need to go back and read Lee Weber's column from yesterday.
It's printed in today's right next to their editorial.
That's right. I read the advance. It's right there.
That's incredible.
Weber, bring back aggressive voice of the Fourth Estate. You have more power than the individual citizen. If you get in there and write real editorials and do real reporting, you can have a real impact. And it's your job to keep the people informed. People don't have time to be hanging around public hearings, glued to their TV sets and watching legislative public hearings and sessions, the majority of which consist of breaks that are longer than the actual work period.
A nice bow on this editorial would have been to expand on that one paragraph and say we support the veto of the veto the overturning of the veto of Bill 11.
Exactly.
Because that's what that says.
Exactly. Now, I'm going to add something else to the editorial comment today. It isn't really an editorial, but it sheds light on a lot of the commenting that you see in columns that bill themselves as editorial. And it's a word we use on Tall Tales a lot. The G word, gaslighting. Merriam-Webster has chosen gaslighting as its word of the year for 2022. Quote, gaslighting, behavior that's mind manipulating, grossly misleading, downright deceitful, as it were, deceitful, is Merriam-Webster's word of the year. She's talking about the left. Lookups for the word on Merriam-Webster increased 1,740% in 2022 over the year before. But something else happened. There wasn't a single event that drove the significant spikes in curiosity, as it usually does with the chosen word of the year. Gaslighting was pervasive. It's a word that has risen so quickly in the English language, and especially in the last 4 years, actually as a surprise to me and many of us, said Peter Sokolowski, Merriam-Webster's editor-at-large, in an exclusive interview with the Associated Press of Monday's unveiling. Now, the Associated Press probably doesn't have to look up the word gaslighting. It was a word looked up frequently every single day of the year, Sokolowski said. There were deep fakes and the dark web. There were deep states and fake news. And there was a whole lot of trolling. Merriam-Webster's top definition for gaslighting is the psychological manipulation of a person, usually over extended periods of time, that causes the victim to question the validity of their own thoughts, perception of realities, or memories, and typically leads to confusion, loss of confidence, self-esteem, uncertainty of one's emotional or mental stability, and a dependency on the perpetrator. Now, I'll give you the perfect example of gaslighting. Two men can enter into a real marriage. A man can get pregnant. A woman can be a man if she really wants to. This is classic gaslighting. And you hear it over and over again from reasonably authoritative people, to the point where a lot of people, my own sister actually believes this crap. And it's out there everywhere that you turn. And of course, if you can get people to believe things like this, and as the article says, they develop a dependence on the perpetrator, the gaslighter. So you gaslight people on things that they were, 10 years ago, they were absolutely sure of. Herman marrying Henry? No. Henry wanting to become Henrietta? Well, yeah, she can be a transdresser, she can dress, but, Henry will always be a man. This is real gaslighting, and it's been extremely effective, to the point that a nominee for the United States Supreme Court said, and we've got to get BJ's opinion on this, said with a straight face that she couldn't define a woman because she's not a biologist. That's how effective this crap has become. I can't define a woman. I'm not a biologist. And she's sitting on the Supreme Court. And where was the media on this? Oh, yeah. Mainstream media cartel, what's your comment on what Ketanji Brown said about the definition of a woman? She's the first African-American woman to be seated on the Supreme Court. That's all? Well,
that's all that matters.
Equity, inclusion, diversity. Where have you been? And it's all gaslighting. It's no wonder it's the most popular word. Gaslighting, as more broadly, the dictionary defines the word thusly: the act or practice of grossly misleading someone, especially for one's own advantage. For sure. Gaslighting is a heinous tool frequently used by abusers in relationships and by politicians and other newsmakers. It can happen between romantic partners within a broad family unit and among friends. It can be a corporate tactic or way to mislead the public. There's also medical gaslighting, when a healthcare professional dismisses a patient's symptoms or illnesses as it's all in your head. Despite its relative prominence, relatively recent prominence, including Gaslighter, the Chicks 2020 album featuring the rousingly angry titular single, the word was brought to life more than 80 years ago with Gaslight, a 1938 play by Patrick Hamilton. 1938 was a great year, Jose, and not a very auspicious year for gaslighters, because that's the year their biggest enemy was born, 1938. Yeah.
Let me guess. He's tall.
Yeah. He tells tales.
Tells tales.
Yeah.
And used to have a goatee.
You got it down there. You got it down pat. Okay, so that play birthed two film adaptations in the 1940s. One, George Cukor's Gaslight in 1944, starred Ingrid Bergman as Paula Alquist and Charles Boyer. Charles Boyer, Le Frenchman, Charles Boyer, very famous actor in Paris. I can get away with that because Frenchie's in France right now. Yeah. Okay, so Paula and Charles, as it were Greg, marry after a whirlwind romance, and Gregory turns out to be a champion gaslighter. Among other instances, he insists her complaints over the constant dimming of their London townhouse's gaslight is a figment of her troubled mind. It wasn't. Now, luckily, I just saw this on Channel 39 about 6 months ago. I'd seen it before, probably a couple of times, so it's still fresh in my mind. So what Gregory did, Gregory knew that Paula had been, his father had a huge cache of very valuable jewels. And by deduction, he figured out that they must be in the family home. Paul wouldn't know where they were, but they were somewhere in the family home. All he had to do was get into that house with enough time, and he could find them, and he could dump Paula and be fantastically rich. Probably spend the rest of his life on La French Riviera. So he started the gaslighting routine, and he figured out a way to get into the attic of the family home by going through a vacant building down the street. And when he was in the attic, he had to have light, so he would turn up the gas lights in the attic as he pawed through all of the junk and stuff up there in the attic. And of course, when he turned up the gas lights upstairs, the pressure in the gas lines went down. So obviously, the lights downstairs went down. So then when he'd come back in, and Paul would say, something's wrong with the gas. And Gregory would say, well, you know, my dear, you have trouble sometimes figuring out what's real and what, and he'd play all kinds of tricks on her. And she'd say something, and he would quote back something to her that she never said. And then he said, my dear, you did say that. You said it yesterday morning over tea. You just don't remember it. So it was a constant stream of gaslighting, including the gas lights in the downstairs dimmed by Greg's efforts upstairs. So it's a very interesting movie. It has as happy an ending as one like that you could expect. And the hero of the movie turns out to be one of my favorite old-time actors that I suspect you've never heard of, Jose. Joseph Cotten. Cotten.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever saw the movie, just saw this one very recently also, The Third Man Theme. The Third Man Theme is right up there with Citizen Kane. Have you ever seen Citizen Kane, Jose?
No, I know about it, though.
It's probably, you know, movie critics say, even though it was made back in the early 40s, maybe the greatest episode in filmography ever. So if you want to know about framing scenes, how to do it, everybody who understands videography has got to watch Citizen Kane. And of course, the protagonist in Citizen Kane was none other than Orson Welles, a great Hollywood name. If you remember the program, what was the name of that program?
There was something called War of the Worlds.
That's the one. Yeah, he was the one that was responsible. The guy was a genius. So he was the villain in Third Man Theme. All good movies. They don't make good movies anymore.
Joseph Cotton was in the 1944 version of Gaslight.
He was the guy that saved the lady's bacon, and I think she probably took off for the French Riviera with him. Yeah. So gaslighting. The term gaslighting was later used by mental health practitioners to clinically describe a form of prolonged coercive control in abusive relationships. You really don't know, you really don't understand that, dear. You must have forgotten.
That's not what we said.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never said.
I never said that.
Where we heard that.
Yeah. That was the media trying to gaslight the Red Queen. Yeah, there is an implication of an intentional deception, Sokolowski said, and once one is aware of that deception, it's not just a straightforward lie, as in, I didn't eat the cookies in the cookie jar. It's something a little bit more devious quality to it. It has possibly an idea of a strategy or a long-term plan. Yeah, so there you go. And I think it's altogether fitting that gaslighting is, because that is the entire underpinning of the sexual anarchy that the left has sprung upon us and now cancels us left and right if we deviate from it. If we are so deluded that we think that a man can't become a woman if they really want to, there must be something wrong with our mental processes. All right, let's take a peek at the card here. I've got, of course, I've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And today, Calamity Jane gets involved with systemic racism. What a combination that is. And then I've got the environmental wackos versus unexploded bombs.
Talk about gaslighting.
Yeah, are you familiar with the term hoist with his own petard?
No.
It's pretty common. Hoist with his own petard means a person got caught up with the rhetoric of his own argument. And it has historical roots back in the days when you'd use a siege engine to attack the enemy's fort. One of these catapults that throw fireballs over. Well, if you're hoist with your own petard, you got caught in that catapult and burned by your own bomb.
So today's title is apropos.
Yeah.
Okay, because I did not realize that their own rhetoric caught on fire itself.
I think so, but there's room for disagreement. And then we've got Anita Areola, or as Ray said, Attorney Anita Areola, whose first name is Attorney, middle name is Anita, right? Such a marvelous use of alliteration. Attorney Anita Areola versus Doug, and then we've got a sidebar for Mr. Boshwani, who is the brain trust in Tina Rose Munya Barnes's office. Talk about gaslighting. Okay, so let's start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And of course, you're all pretty familiar with that. When Paul came along and said, hey, you guys, this stuff you've been calling red rice, ain't really red, it's orange. He was canceled by the Daily News. And here's what the rice looks like. No, it ain't red. It's orange. And anybody who's not colorblind can see that it's orange. But if you come along and call it orange rice, you're going to be canceled. Because the narrative is that it's red, even though the truth is that it's orange. When you've got a narrative that's clearly expressed, who cares what the truth is? Okay, now here's an article from today's Post. And I just label it systemic racism. And the title is Groups, quote, orange the world against violence.
I saw that.
Yeah. What do you think they really meant?
They should have said red.
Paint red signs? Yeah. The Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs and the Guam Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Family Violence have joined together to participate in the international 16 days of activism. Campaign to end gender-based violence. I could tell Jane a good way to end gender-based violence. Stop aborting half the babies that are aborted, because half of them, a little bit more, are females. The campaign encourages people to, quote, orange the world in support of ending gender-based violence by wearing the color orange from November 25 to December 10. You know, Jose, we're going to have to hurry like hell to make the deadline here. According to my clock, it's already November 30th.
Just don't walk down the street because people will think there's a construction site nearby.
Yeah, but if we're going to make that December 25 deadline, we're going to have to contact Michio Kaku, who's one of the stars on The Point, right?
Science fantastic.
Yeah, it is a fantastic. It's almost as good as Tall Tales.
Almost.
Yeah, except, you know, he's not one to, well, anyhow, he always tells the truth. Yeah, so if it started on November 25 and you're just telling us about it now, it must be really important, right? Details. A way to demonstrate support for the campaign, wearing something orange, a garment, a ribbon, or a jockstrap, for example, will illustrate your commitment to ending violence against women, girls, and all marginalized persons. Women, girls, and all marginalized persons. You know who that is? Everybody except white people.
Everyone who has a column in the Guam Daily Post.
Exactly. Marginalized people. Yeah. Commitment to ending violence against women, girls, and all marginalized persons. So violence against non-marginalized people is okay. In fact, it's probably encouraged, right? Yeah. Couldn't we just end violence against everybody?
You got to have a specific victim.
Yeah. Without a victim, there's no story. Yeah, you're right. Jane Flores, director of the Guam Bureau of Women's Affairs, said the Bureau and coalition worked to have Guam participate in the international campaign for the first time. And here's Jane's rationale. Ready? We stand with our sisters and our LGBTQ friends and relatives. Now, sisters used to describe people of the female sex. I have a sister. She is a woman. She's been a woman all her life. She committed the unpardonable. She married a man. She has 2 children, a daughter and a son. She is the child of the same two people that I am a child of. My dad was a man, my mother was a woman. And I guess we can't blame them because they didn't know in 1938 when they got married. They didn't know what was actually available. And then they were married in March 4th, the only day of the year that gives a command. And I came along really quick, December 20. And I guess my mom wasn't smart enough to figure out that this is, of course, before Anita Williams' time, but my mom didn't understand that it's impossible to separate a woman's choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. So my mom could have had an abortion. And think of how things would have turned out differently had she done that. Yeah. But anyhow, we stand with our sisters and our LGBTQ friends and relatives. So if sisters means females, then she doesn't stand with you and I, Jose.
No.
Because we're straight men.
Right.
Yeah. So she doesn't stand with us. So if I were to wear my orange shirt every day, and other than creating sort of a social discomfort for those around me, would I be guilty of cultural appropriation?
You would negatively affect the campaign, thus zero out the efforts.
Yeah, because I'm not a sister and I'm not LGBTQ. Let's take a short break before we come back and finish up this nonsense.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so it's really good that I read the article from Merriam-Webster about gaslighting being the most used. If you wanted an example of gaslighting, I'm reading it to you right now. This is a classic example of gaslighting. We stand with our sisters and our LGBTQ friends and relatives. Now, I've got to do a sunshine to the Bureau of Women's Affairs. No later than close of business next Wednesday, email me public records showing me Jane Flores's pronouns. Because she's obviously so woke that she couldn't possibly be using she, her, and hers. Right, Jose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. She goes on to say, they, meaning our sisters and our LGBTQ friends and relatives, face domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, exploitation, and other crimes. Plus, now here's the real kicker, Plus, recently we had an issue arise with regard to a trans person participating in sports. Talk about a marginalized person.
That can go both ways.
Well, it can only go one way.
No, but you're right.
It can only go one way. And I wrote a column on it in the Pacific Island Times. It's still there. Go to pacificislandtimes.com and go to Insights, and you can find my column where I described what happened at the rugby game when this obvious male, bigger and stronger than any of the females, played on the Guam High, that's the military's high school rugby team, and injured 3 of the girls on the other side. And there was a sense of outrage in my column because the coach and the referee didn't stop that game when the man came on the field dressed like a woman. And they didn't. They let it go. And then the Department of Education, public schools, said we have to handle this very carefully because of Title IX, and they danced all the way around it. My take was when that guy came out on the field, the referee should have said, "Time out, you. This is the girls' rugby league, off the field." And if he hadn't done that, the male rugby the other rugby coach should have said, "Come on, girls, we're going home. We're not playing against this guy." I mean, it was the absolute clearest case of the gaslighting here when people who knew better did not want to come out and say, "This is wrong. We're not going to do this anymore." And the tagline in my commercial was, this was all because of one word, one new word in our vocabulary: transgender. If we hadn't been, we didn't, I suspect that we didn't know the word transgender 10 years ago. And had this happened 10 years ago, exactly what I said should have happened would have happened. But now, because of the gaslighting in this, all of the gaslighting coming from the left and from the media, we think that there's something normal about a guy presenting himself as a woman and playing in girls' sports and, of course, beating the hell out of the girls. Because whether the sexual anarchists like it or not, men are bigger, stronger, and faster than women. So female athletes don't have a chance, and that's why we separate them. That's why we have girls' leagues and boys' leagues. Okay, going on with Jane's gaslighting. Flores added that the world has seen more of these issues on the international stage as well. Yeah, the gaslighting is not strictly a local phenomenon. Somehow I got yesterday's Tall Tales on Facebook, Jose.
It looks like it went off again, just like this morning, so I'm going to check this out.
All right. No, I've got it on my iPad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but when I refresh, I can just come back. Yesterday was a pretty good episode, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll watch it during the breaks. Yeah, creating awareness of educating people about the ways in which gender-based violence is manifested and knowing how to stop it are so important because awareness and education create understanding. Substitute the word gaslighting for education wherever it appears. And understanding creates peace. It may seem a simplistic goal, but the bottom line is that we'll all need to treat each other better and be more accepting of one another. Well, I don't have any problem with that. I think we should all attempt to treat other people well unless there's some reason not to, like perhaps the way the other person acts. But the fact that a person can't get the whole sexual or anarchy thing straight, so long as he keeps it to himself and doesn't try to impress it or enforce it on me, fine. I'll treat him well. I'll treat her well. I'll treat them well. Okay, other ways the campaign suggests you can support the cause is volunteer for Vero, Erica's House, and Elise Shelter, or another local nonprofit that helps women and persons affected by gender-based violence. 2, be an advocate on social media by using the hashtag #OrangeTheWorld. 3, learn about women's rights, bodily autonomy. What do you know about bodily autonomy, Jose? You have to learn about women's rights, bodily autonomy, and gender violence.
Bodily autonomy?
Yeah.
That's just a body that's on automatic.
I think the
Like the
term
rhetoric.
bodily autonomy is an introduction to a form of gaslighting to try to get you to think that abortion is about something other than killing a baby.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what bodily autonomy is. You can donate to an organization that supports the victims of gender-based violence. Finally, learn how to spot the signs of gender-based violence. Yeah. Okay. So let's learn to spot the signs of gender-based violence. Like if one of the females at your shop comes to work with a black eye, that might be a tip-off. Okay, let's take a short break, and when I come back from the break, I'm going to be entertaining another Joe on transgender and LGB.
Farewell, ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30-plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal Opportunity Lender, member FDIC.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking to another Joe. And now, Jose, getting back to Facebook here, actually, I'm watching a recording of today's show.
Yeah, I'm going to reset the stream at the top of the hour when the news starts. YouTube is still streaming and streaming strong, just like this morning. But apparently Facebook wanted to stop our stream again, so they've ceased everything already.
Well, let's see if I can get to YouTube then.
Should be your last tab there.
Yeah. Yeah, sure it is. I'm no better looking in YouTube than I am in Facebook, Jose.
No.
Yeah. Well,
There's no filter that can do that, Bob.
yeah.
You're at peak performance.
You can buy those apps, though, that, you know, that, I don't know if I ever showed you the one where I look like Tom Hanks.
Oh, no. Yeah. That one costs too much.
That app, yeah, especially for a heavy-duty job like on me, right? That would be the industrial-grade app.
Hours of rendering.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what another Joe can tell us about. Go ahead, another Joe. Another Joe.
Sure,
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Uncle Bob.
Are you going to ask me if I can hear you?
You already asked for me.
Okay.
So what got my attention going back, I don't know how many years, was that the movement is making issues where there doesn't seem to be a need to make issues. Well, it's just my opinion. Where in particular there was the same-sex couple marriage when they wanted to have a cake made. And the baker said, that's my beliefs, I can't do it. And they took him to court. And so that's where it got my attention, because basically they'll go after a business find them and possibly close the business because they cannot they're going to be forced to comply, and so they can do that with bakery. What else are they going to do it with? So it isn't like they are, they're not the victims. They're the ones who are the aggressors.
They are for sure.
That's what got my attention.
And those cake shop cases, the plaintiff in those looked long and hard to find a cake shop that would turn them down, so they'd have something to bitch about. They would have something to bring to the court. And, of course, that's why the folks over there on that side are so incensed with the current makeup of the Supreme Court, because they don't have enough lefties on the Supreme Court to support their sexual anarchy.
Activist judges.
Yeah. Well, not only, you can be an active, the Lochner court way back at the turn of the century was an activist court, but in the conservative direction. And the Lochner area is criticized even by conservatives. But if you're an activist and you're one of the living Constitution boys, and you think, well, the majority of the country favors abortion, and everybody goes along with the gay agenda, et cetera. Therefore, I guess I should too because I'm on the court. That's not the way the Supreme Court's supposed to work. It does sometimes. Anyhow, good comment, another Joe. Yeah, rather than being the marginalized victims, they're the aggressors. Good call.
Yeah. And the thing is that I wouldn't otherwise have paid attention, and their preferences. I think people. Jordan Peterson brought up a good point. We attempt to be cautious, and we want to be considerate and courteous, and you have manners. That's the way I explain what he was saying. Basically, he's saying we want to do things right. We want to be on the right side, and so we question whether or not we're right a lot of the time. When there's no doubt where there's something wrong with us having particular beliefs that are different from other people. And if we are not harming other people, then we should not be persecuted for having beliefs which are clearly defined. If you're a Christian, they tell you in church, okay, this is what you're supposed to believe, and how relationships are supposed to be between men and women. So anyway, I'll just keep listening. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, on that point, another Joe, I lean libertarian in some respects. I'm a conservative, but I lean libertarian. And a libertarian would tell you that the key is the non-aggression principle. Mm-hmm. That a person ought to be free to have the liberty to do whatever he wants, so long as he doesn't hurt somebody else. And I think there has to be some limits on that, but that's exactly what you're saying. So, if you want to dress up like a woman, fine. Just don't expect that I'm going to go along with it. If I see you, I'll tip my hat to you, but I'm not going to buy your agenda. And the force that the sexual anarchists are bringing to this, in the newspapers, the gaslighting, the courts, it doesn't come very close to the non-aggression principle.
Yeah. Okay, Bob. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Good talking to you, another Joe. So I'm on YouTube, and I'm looking at the comments. And I've got MP Ogo on YouTube. Obviously, you can get YouTube in Salt Lake City, Utah, Jose. Ken Brown's there. I think Ken Brown is in somewhere in California. We've got Patricia. We've got Sandra Sayo, who says she doesn't like YouTube, but she likes Tall Tales, so she's putting up with it. And Peter Turine telling us buenas from France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Buenas from France. So let me see. How do you say that in French? How do you say buenas in French?
Bonjour.
Yeah. Bonjour, Monsieur Pierre. Yeah. And then we've got Colin Clark and Margaret Stockyo. And then PAS 36, that fun was hidden by Tall Tales. I don't know what
they're not that fun.
Oh, okay. And then it ends at the end of the hour, and I got to refresh.
Actually, we're going to keep with the stream.
Okay.
And then we've reported to the text about what happened on Facebook.
All
so
right.
don't go away. We're going to stay with the stream, and you don't have to do anything else.
Just stay with Facebook, and with YouTube. And if you're out there listening and you want to see, go to YouTube. Otherwise, your radio is still good.
Also, if you're unable to listen to the radio, you can go to your app store, either Google Play or the Apple App Store, download the Points app, or you can also download Audacity. And there's one more app, I can't remember which one that we are.
And I know you can get the Point on Alexa, but you got to say, Alexa, play
the Point.
Play the Point radio.
Okay.
Play the Point radio.
There you go.
And I've got a Bose radio that I'm not quite sure of the mechanics of it, but I think it gets the station from the same place as Alexa. So I'm listening to my Bose out on my porch, and if I come inside, I listen to Alexa, and there's no time gap. You know, if you listen to Alexa and you listen to your radio, they're not in sync with one another. So anyhow, if you want to see Tall Tales, go to YouTube. If you want to listen, we just told you all the different ways you can listen.
Here's some more techie nerdiness. I have my Alexa scheduled to play The Point during Ray's show, and not this one because I'm here, but I think I might anyways, so those at home can listen.
Yeah, you should share. Generosity, Jose. Okay, we're just about time for the big halftime show, and the next item on the card is Tom Kreis versus the Briar Patch, but a little bit more. So I'm going to start with it, even though we're going to have to break for the halftime show. So, everybody who was listening knows, everybody who reads the paper knows that University of Guam professor punished for speaking out about local elections. So Tom Kreis, the president of the university, has issued Ron McNinch a letter of reprimand for some of the things that he said, did, and emailed during the last election. And when I was characterizing this yesterday, I said, if you guys remember Uncle Remus, this was a classic case of Brer Bear throwing Brer Rabbit in the briar patch. You couldn't do anything to McNinch that could make him any happier. And I hypothesized yesterday that he'll have so much to say, and there'll be so many people interested in listening to him talk about free speech, academic freedom, cancellation, the university, wokeness, the leftist revolt at the universities. He's got so much to talk about. I figure that he's probably in touch with what's his name, the electric car guy.
Oh, Elon Musk.
Yeah, with Elon Musk, to have Elon Musk fabricate an electric soapbox for him. So let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to the Briar Patch.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
49 in the south. I'm Jack Callahan. Fox News. Suspected tornadoes touching down in Louisiana and Mississippi, and the threat of more storms over the next few hours.
The tornado watch is extended till 6 o'clock in the morning for areas in Alabama, but we also have the tornado watch for pretty much all of northern Mississippi as well as northern portions of Louisiana, where it's also a particularly dangerous situation.
Meteorologist Marissa Torres at Fox Weather. Some homes reported damage by the storms in Choctaw County in Mississippi. The flu season arrived early, and it's getting worse. According to the Centers for Disease Control, more than 2,900 people, including a dozen children, have died from the flu in the last 2 months. An estimated 53,000 people have been hospitalized for the flu so far this season. The CDC says that hospitalization rate is higher this year than in any year since the 2010-2011 flu season. With 12 Republicans voting yes, the Senate has passed a bill that would guarantee a right to same-sex and interracial marriage in federal law. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Passing this bill is our chance to send a message to Americans everywhere. No matter who you are or who you love, you too deserve dignity and equal treatment under the law.
The bill goes next to the House, which is expected to pass it easily. The House could vote as early as Wednesday on a bill to impose a settlement on rail unions to avoid a rail strike next week. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says this ought not be a congressional function.
We're just weeks away from the busiest season of the entire year of Christmas. And our whole infrastructure can shut down based upon this administration's negotiation with the rail, this pro-union individual who has failed once again. And he's asking government to step in.
A tentative agreement was reached with the 12 rail unions in September, but the rank and file of 4 of the unions have refused to ratify it. America is listening to Fox News.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
Fox News.
The Biden administration is being criticized over a comment made about Twitter.
The White House taking heed for remarks that the press secretary made on Monday regarding Twitter, with Elon Musk now at the helm.
We're all keeping a close eye on this. We're all monitoring what's currently occurring.
Republicans were quick to react, with House Judiciary GOP tweeting, "Why is the Biden White House scared of the First Amendment and Elon Musk?" House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said he takes personal offense to the comments made at the briefing room podium about keeping an eye on the platform. For their part, the White House argues that the social media companies in general have a responsibility to prevent users from inciting violence.
Fox's Kevin Corke. He made no final statement. Convicted cop killer Kevin Johnson was put to death on Missouri's death row Tuesday evening for the 2005 rage killing of a police officer whom he had erroneously blamed for his younger brother's death. Alabama says it will not seek another lethal injection date for Alan Miller, the inmate whose September execution was halted when medical technicians couldn't start an IV after trying for more than an hour. The state has agreed to never again try to use lethal injection on Miller. They've had 3 delayed executions since 2018. A New Hampshire man finds gold in the garbage. That means he can go home again.
Kevin Butler didn't notice that his wife had just cleaned her wedding and engagement rings and wrapped them in a napkin to dry. He tossed out the napkin and took the trash to the transfer station in nearby Windham. Several hours later, Butler was made aware of his mistake, and with the help of several sanitation workers and excavation equipment, began looking for what was essentially a needle in a 20-ton garbage haystack. Lucky for Butler, and perhaps his marriage, he found the 2 rings under some carrot and sweet potato peelings, still wrapped inside the napkin. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Farewell ANZ Bank. You've been an excellent corporate citizen for 30 plus years. And yes, we're competitors, but we're sorry to see you go. Now let us address the bank's customers. Bank Pacific's arms are wide open to accept your banking needs, whether it be to handle your savings, commercial checking, merchant business, or consumer or commercial loan needs. We're open on Saturdays in 4 convenient locations and have excellent online banking services. And we're staying, for as you might know, where others put branches, we place roots. Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC.
So here we are after that big halftime show, and before the halftime show, I started out talking about Ron McNinch, professor at the university, and the story that ran in the Daily News. McNinch reprimanded for election emails, asserts his free speech violation. And I spent some time on that yesterday, telling you what happened, what the president did, etc. Ron himself came on the show, and I see it as President Christ throwing Ron in the briar patch, just like Brer Bear throwing Brer Rabbit in the briar patch, because this gives Ron the perfect soapbox from which to expound on the things that he's been expounding upon for the last, 30 years? And he has a lot to say. There's a lot that needs to be said. And there are a lot of people that are going to want to listen to him. So I'm looking forward to this. I see this as a really great opportunity to teach some lessons about the First Amendment, about free speech, about academic freedom, about what we look to universities for and what we abhor in universities, etc. Now, when I got into this yesterday, I didn't have enough time to get into a little bit of a legal analysis, which I'll do right now. And that is that if we're talking about at-will employees, an at-will employee is someone who's not employed on an employment contract, etc., there are 3 Supreme Court cases that are really important. The first one is called Pickering versus Board of Education. This one goes way back to the 1960s. And I'm digging these out of my memory banks. Pickering was a school teacher who wrote letters to the editor critical of a school board in a place called Will County, Illinois. I suppose, given the current tenor of the times, the county board in Will County has probably now filed a petition with the state legislature to change the name of the county to Won't County. Right? Yeah. And the Board of Education was trying to float a bond issue to build some new schools. And Pickering was critical of the Board of Education and the way they were going about it, some of the things they said, and some of the things that Pickering said were actually factually incorrect. So for being so cheeky and having the nerve to criticize a Board of Education, the board fired Pickering. And the case filtered up through the Illinois court system from the Illinois Supreme Court to the United States Supreme Court, which ruled who better to talk about public education than teachers. If it's an issue about public education and a teacher wants to speak out about it, even if he's wrong, if he's not guilty of what's called malice in the laws of libel, then you can't fire him. This is not a career-ending event. So Pickering got his job back. I suppose he got his back pay. Probably had to mitigate damages because Rory wasn't the superintendent back there. So that was the first case. The next case that comes along is Connick versus Myers. This came out of New Orleans. The district attorney of New Orleans at the time was Harry Connick Jr., the son of the famous band leader. And, yeah.
Okay.
And he fired one of his assistant attorneys general, who took it upon herself to conduct a survey amongst the assistant attorneys general in the office of the efficacy of the leadership of Harry Connick Jr. Connick fired her, and the Supreme Court said the bust was good. And the Supreme Court said the Constitution does not apply in full force when the government is an employer dealing with an employment relationship. So this was different from Pickering. Pickering was not bitching about his own situation in the school district. He was talking about a topic of general interest. So if a public employee is talking about a topic of, if he's just grinding his own axe about, they gave me too many classes and I don't have a decent, no, you're not, that's not protected. So when a public agency deals with an employee in the employer-employee sense, then if the employer can make a case that what the employee said was disruptive to the operations of the government agency, he can be fired. And that's exactly what Connick did to Myers. And then the third case is Garcetti versus Ceballos. And that goes along the same lines, that if what you're saying is in the line of duty, you are not protected. It's a strange case. But the really important takeaway here is that if McNinch is talking about general matters and he's not complaining about the employment, he's not grinding his own axe, then even an at-will employee has job protection. Now, of course, folks at the university are in a little different situation. I haven't completely looked into this, but university professors are entitled to what's called tenure. After a university has been on board for a period of time, shown that he is good at what he does, he goes before a tenure committee. And university tenure is basically job protection, which means that you can't be fired unless maybe you set the president's office on fire or something like that. And then there's also a board union contract at the university. So my horseback opinion here, sometimes I'll give you a horseback opinion, sometimes a curbstone opinion, which means that this is the way it appears without me doing a whole lot of thinking about it or doing any research. I'm sitting on horseback and you say, hey, Bob, how about this? And I answer you, I don't even dismount. So my horseback opinion is that no. Now, the difference between a Pickering firing and a firing that's protected by tenure, contract, etc., is that my recollection is that only the first category would give rise to liability under Section 42 U.S. 1983. In other words, a civil rights suit where you can recover the big bucks and attorney's fees. The latest in McNinch's case is that he got a letter from a guy named Zach Greenberg, who is with FIRE. And FIRE, and I cautioned everybody not to, FIRE is an acronym. I can't remember what the acronym says, and this article doesn't tell us either. Freedom of Information Regarding Employment or something like that. But don't be talking about this organization the next time you go to the movies, especially if you tend to speak loud. Okay, so the title here is University of Guam Professor Punished for Speaking About Local Elections. Now, just going that far, what could be more of general interest than local elections, right? Where America's day begins is apparently where the First Amendment ends, as the University of Guam has punished a professor for political speech clearly protected by the Constitution. FIRE calls on the island university to rescind its punishment of Professor Ron McNinch for sharing his opinions about Guam's November 4 election. Did we have two this year, Jose? I know we had one on November 8.
Didn't we have one when did early voting start? From then all the way to November 8. But yeah,
I think that
that's a mistype.
I think this guy or this outfit FIRE buys their calendars at the same place that Orange the World buys its calendars. Yeah.
At a discount, hopefully.
Yeah. For sharing his opinions about November 4 elections with students, colleagues, and the media. Perhaps it's easy for university administrators nearly 8,000 miles away from where the First Amendment was ratified to forget that as bureaucrats at a public university in a U.S. territory, they are legally bound to protect free speech. However, proximity to tax-free shopping and amazing weather does not damper UOG's legal obligation to protect student and faculty expressive rights. Enter Ron McNinch, Associate Professor of Public Administration and Chair of Public Administration and Legal Studies at the University of Guam. McNinch, also known as the Georgia Peach, encouraged candidates in Guam's November 4 local elections to attend the Great Debate, a political forum for local candidates hosted at the university and organized by McNinch, and even offered to participate in the event in the candidate's absence. McNinch, in fact, criticized candidates for waiving their attendance, emailing students and journalists. Whoever does not show up will not win this election. It's just that simple. This is political calculus everyone can understand. This is reality. Let everyone else play politics. The Great Debate will go on. Do not play with the University of Guam and our students. McNinch also, now he doesn't use the magic words, oppressed or marginalized. If he had just said that the students were oppressed and marginalized, Christ would dry up and blow away in a heartbeat. McNinch also emailed faculty members encouraging them to stay out of the election and sharing his opinions on who would win in November. This milquetoast political commentary, I suppose I ought to define milquetoast. Okay, there was a breakfast dish when I was a kid. I don't think anybody does it anymore. But you take white bread, toast it, butter it, and put it in a bowl of hot milk, and you can eat it for breakfast. Can you imagine what it tastes like?
Bland.
I can't either.
No.
Because it's absolutely tasteless. You could pour a whole bottle of Tabasco in there and mix a couple of Donny Denanchi, and it still would be tasteless. So the term milk toast is used for a person or a position or a speech or a rap that has absolutely no flavor whatsoever. But instead of being spelled M-I-L-K, it's spelled M-I-L-Q-U-E, toast. But it's a good word, and it fits right in here because what McNinch said is pretty mild, actually, when you're talking about the elections this season. This milquetoast political commentary somehow drew the ire of the university's president, Thomas Kreis, who punished McNinch for being, quote, insulting, rude, and belligerent to the political candidates that were invited to participate in the great debate. Is that all? He should have gone even farther than that for the ones that were invited and didn't show. I would go so far as to say angry, cranky, severe criticism, rank insults, etc. You guys want to be governor and you can't even show up for a debate? What kind of game are you playing? Kreis also disciplined McNinch because his first email to members of the public media improperly used his official UOG email account with his university title. I wonder if Kreis ever heard of a lady named, what was her name? Paris Hattori. What's her first name?
Anne
Paris Hattori, who used her university title on a national TV show and said something that's absolutely untrue. But Robert Underwood took firm action on that. He, he kind of repeated the same thing that she said in other fora. Kreis placed an official warning in McNinch's file and required him to submit a development plan to avoid alleged policy violations in the future. Does this sound like re-education, Jose? Yeah, McNinch is now subject to development of a re-education plan. And if he doesn't get it right, you know where Goat Island is? It's the nearest thing we've got to Siberia here in the Mariana Islands. Yeah, I could see McNinch sent off to a re-education camp if he doesn't get his plan down right. Notably, Fire's first, and then there's the subheading, Kreis has it completely backward. The First Amendment protects citizens from government censorship, not political candidates from criticism. Yeah, so basic. Notably, Fire's first case at Guam is also the first time we have seen a university president tell a professor he cannot insult those merely aspiring to hold political office. Kreis has it completely backward. In Fire's November 21 letter to the university, we explain how the First Amendment's protection of even hateful political expression is enshrined in our profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials. Criticism of public candidates is at the very heart of any conception of free expression and receives the First Amendment's strongest protection. If you're going to run for public office in America, whether for leader of an island's territory or president of the U.S., you will be criticized, sure as America's day starts in Guam. Shielding political candidates from insulting, rude, and belligerent criticism muzzles the very people politicians are elected to serve. McNinch and his faculty colleagues have the First Amendment right to speak as private citizens on matters of public concern, including elections. The university's ban on faculty expression that amounts to insulting, rude, or belligerent treatment of the public students or other university employees is an additional affront to the First Amendment and must be rescinded. Faculty may be disciplined for unprotected true threats, discriminatory harassment, or other criminal conduct, but merely offensive speech remains fully protected. UOG's application of this policy to encompass speech about political candidates is a perfect example of why such vague, broad restrictions on blank expression have no place at public university bound by the First Amendment. Fire calls on the university to lift the punishment of McNinch for his clearly protected speech and to commit the upholding of faculty expressive rights by revising its policies to comply with the First Amendment. So the most troublesome thing about this whole thing, Jose, is this idea that McNinch, that Price has ordered McNinch. Let's see, where's that sentence? He is to submit a development plan to avoid alleged policy violations in the future. Thought control. Yeah. Now I have an alternative solution. That Christ should be, the Board of Regents should require Christ to submit a development plan to avoid alleged violations of the First Amendment in the future. That part is really troublesome. You know, if he did something wrong, that's one thing, but to get him, and Ray had it right this morning when he was talking to McNinch about, you know, reconciliation, contrition, how many Hail Marys he had to say. Yeah, this is just really, really bad.
How many knees on the lawn he has to take for
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good one, Jose. Yeah, so Ron, stick to your guns, and you know, as I mentioned yesterday, I know it's personal to you, but there's lessons that have to be taught, and you're the ideal position to teach these lessons. That this stuff just cannot go on. It cannot be tolerated, because if you can do it at a university, how about the line departments? How about public works? You know, how about the Department of, how about Public Health and Social Services? Yeah. Okay, let's head for Wrigley Field in the 7th inning stretch.
Try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Okay, next we go to environmental wackos versus the unexploded bombs. And this is a Sabina Paris bill. The bill initially was referred to Talina Nelson, who is a National Guardsman, but somehow mysteriously got re-referred to Sabina Paris, who is anything but a National Guardsman. I've told you a little bit about Sabina before, but she is a member of the International Women's Network Against Militarism. And here's a little bit about Sabina Paris. Sabina Paris, who attended the June International Women's Network Against Militarism meeting as a representative of Protege Latexan. While media attention was transfixed on the missile threat that week, the Direct Action Group was ratcheting up its efforts before it was too late to halt the construction of a DoD live training range complex at Northwest Field, located above the Guam National Wildlife Refuge, which DoD officials claim is a linchpin to the military buildup. And a little bit more about Paris. Sabina has been an advocate for human rights for her people around various interrelated issues, from safeguarding their rights to water, advocating for Chamorro self-determination, to now trying to prevent the destruction of acres of pristine limestone forests. Now, you see this phrase, pristine limestone forests, all the time, and how the separatists are trying to protect it. And I expect there are a lot of folks out there who are thinking, gosh, I wonder where I can go to see some of this pristine limestone forest. I probably got to go down south, maybe in Alahan or Moleso. Here is another word for pristine limestone forest: the boonies. You drive around anywhere north of Nimitz Hill, and the boonies that you see Public Works not keeping off the shoulders of the highway is pristine limestone forest. It's really hard to come by, isn't it? Yeah. Once again, another little historical footnote. You know, at the end of World War II, erosion was a big problem. The war, the bombing, the fighting, etc., killed an awful lot of the plant life. And when there aren't plants holding the soil in place, erosion takes place. Water washes rivulets in the soil, washes it in the, etc. So what the Navy did was they gathered up as many Tongan seeds as they could, and they seeded as much as the island they could with Tongan. I don't have to explain to anybody what Tongan is, right? But the Tongan will only grow, it can't penetrate the limestone forest. The only place it will grow is if someplace where the earth has been disturbed by erosion or digging or something like that. So that the boonies, there's Tongan in the boonies, but the boonies are primarily pristine limestone forest. And I've noticed how the separatists have rallied around those things for years and years and years, right? Anyhow, she tried to prevent the destruction of acres of pristine limestone forests which threaten ancestral sites, the island's northern water aquifer, and endangered native species. She helped to organize the 2007 International Women's Network Against Militarism meeting in San Francisco and the 7th conference hosted by Guam in 2009, 3 months before the release of a 10,000-page draft environmental impact statement. So this is the chair, the author and the one who introduced this bill, a classic environmental wacko. And it's just kind of miraculous how it bounced from Nelson, a guardsman's committee, to Flores's committee, a wacko. Okay, so here's the article. Maneco Flores testified before lawmakers Tuesday afternoon with a sense of excitement. Now, that's really important, Jose. I can't tell you how important to me it is to know that Monica Flores testified with a sense of excitement. The legislation she had come to speak on proposed 2 changes to law, but supporters such as Flores praised the measure as having a major impact on protecting Guam's environment and the health of its people. Bill 360 would append to a list of prohibited hazardous waste activities the import of transshipment of hazardous waste into Guam and the use of open burning, open detonation for the disposal of hazardous waste. So you can't bring hazardous waste into the island, and if you find it on the island, you can't burn it, you can't detonate it. This is something that is pretty substantial. It's more than words. It's more than symbolism. It's actually looking at how Guam is able to administer the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act and enhance our authority actually, Flores said, later adding, "We're just really excited with this bill because it gives us hope and it gives the power back to the people." However, in the same hearing, lawmakers also heard concerns about how Bill 360 will negatively impact neighboring islands as well as Guam's ability to safely dispose of found ordnance. Open burn, open detonation disposal activities have been at the center of recent environmental concerns, sparked by a permit application from Anderson Air Force Base to continue such activities at Taragi Beach. The permit is usually renewed every 3 years. Detonations have been taking place at the site, but open burning has not occurred since 2002. Local activist group Proteji Latexian, Save Rotidian, filed suit against the U.S. Air Force with the help of Earth Justice, a nonprofit organization involved in environmental legal issues, on grounds that the Air Force failed to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. The suit was dismissed at the District Court of Guam, but Proteji Latexian appealed the case to the Ninth Circuit. In the meantime, the group has called on the Guam Environmental Protection Agency to deny the open burn, open detonation application. And Chief Judge of the Guam District Court, Francis Gatewood, said, "Don't come to me with this. That's the EPA's job. If you want to raise hell with somebody, go over there." Flores is a member of Proteji Latexian. Quote, "This permit renewal came up and we didn't know about it. It was something that kind of fell under the radar not for just Proteji Latexian, but the whole community. And it wasn't until Senator Sabina Paris actually had an informational briefing last October to bring this permit application to the public. If it wasn't for that hearing, we wouldn't have had a chance to provide comment on that permit application." So I guess they didn't do this in secret, did they, Jose? Too bad. Would have made the story so much more interesting. She was one of several who testified. However, opposition did come from Leroy Moore, president of Unitech Environmental Guam. The firm provides environmental and UXO MEC service. I don't know what MEC means, but UXO means unexpended ordnance. Involving munitions and explosives of concern and unexploded explosive ordnance, and began operations in Guam by providing the Navy with hazardous waste packaging and disposal services, according to Unitech's website. As an industry expert, this guy's probably just about as proud of his humility as I am of mine. You know, with that sensibility, he could be a host on Tall Tales.
Careful.
As an industry expert, I propose Bill 360 be withdrawn and not voted on a committee for passage into law, Moore said. The beginning content of the bill regarding the environmental health hazards associated with explosives and hazardous waste is purposely written to frighten the reader regarding the danger of these items. The layperson knows that there are dangers. That's not the question. However, what the layman may not know is that both unexploded ordnance and hazardous waste are highly regulated by the U.S. federal government, Guam Code, international regulations through both country and UN regulations. He said the proper research and discussions with industry experts were not performed for the measure. God, I'm surprised, Jose. They didn't, the Protege Texan folks and Sabina didn't talk with people in the EOD business?
How dare they?
I'm shocked, I tell you. By banning the transshipment of hazardous waste in open burn, open detonation in Guam, the bill will significantly damage the environment of other Pacific islands. So, why is this important? You know, but let's not anybody talk about our Chamorros brothers and sisters in the Northern Marianas until we get this bill out of our hair. And put lives at risk with unexploded ordnance and munitions and explosives. Pacific Islands have limited transportation options, according to Moore. The CNMI and Federated States of Micronesia have their ocean freight routed through Guam, as does the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Diego Garcia, Wake, and Midway Islands also occasionally route ocean services through Guam. Like Guam, these islands do not have the ability to perform treatment and disposal of hazardous waste. Like Guam, hazardous waste generated must be transported to locations where proper treatment and disposal can be performed. With Guam acting as a transportation hub for these islands, Bill 360 would prevent neighboring islands from properly disposing of hazardous waste because it would make it illegal to transship into Guam. Transshipment does not pose a threat to Guam, as hazardous waste ultimately transshipped to other locations for proper disposal, he added. Regarding open burn, open detonation, Moore said multiple regulations cover the handling and treatment of explosives. Unexploded ordnance is found to Guam to this day on Guam. It happens all the time. Remnants from World War II, and the military supports the island by taking ordnance found outside of military. Remember this. Military supports the island by taking ordnance found outside of military properties and disposes of the ordnance through open detonation outside the fence. This activity will stop if passed into law. The military's permanent ranges have limited explosive waste and can be brought to the range. Once the explosive weight is reached, no further explosives can be brought. If Bill 360 becomes law, found unexploded ordnance on civilian and government land will have to remain where it's found, threatening the safety of the people of Guam for an uncontrolled detonation. Moore said, adding that military construction activities will grind to a halt without the ability to store and dispose of found explosives. Now, I want to read that last sentence because, of course, this is what it's all about. This is not about the environment. This is not about safety or anything at all. This is what it's all about. Remember, Sabina, the International Women's Network Against Militarism. So if we can't explode them and burn them on Guam, military construction activities will grind to a halt. And of course, that's exactly what they want to happen. Because the International Women's Network Against Militarism doesn't want any military here. And of course, with respect to Moore's statement, you know, there's a lot of unexploded ordnance around here from World War II. If we could zoom in, if we had one of those special mics where you could hear a person whisper, we would hear Sabina say, "We told you so." That's exactly why we shouldn't have war. If you guys had been listening back in 1941, we wouldn't have had to introduce this bill, would we? Sabina Paris introduced Bill 360. Its intent states that open burning and open detonation are based on dirty technology with virtually no emission controls that results in the release of hazardous chemicals such as lead and highly carcinogenic substances. According to the bill, which goes on to discuss various historic and regulatory matters surrounding open burning, open detonation, the legislature intends to prohibit outdated, harmful practices because healthy air, water, and land are necessary for the continued health and sustenance of our people. Now, getting them blown apart by a bomb that some kid finds out in the boonies, that's okay.
As long as they clean up after each other.
Exactly. All right, I've still got a little bit more here, but I got to take a short break. And let me see who I've got on the break here. I got Ron McNench. Ron, I'll get to you. No, we'll get you plenty of time before we have to say goodbye to the president. But I got to go to Churchill Downs right now.
Christmas is a very special time, but it can also be a very hard time. For the foster children Harvest House serves, it can be difficult and painful being away from their families and siblings. During Harvest House's Christmas celebration event, we hope that siblings living in different foster homes can join together to share in Christmas joy. We need your help to provide all 600 plus foster children with Christmas gifts. Help us make this a memorable Christmas for each of them. Harvest House will be accepting gifts until December 14th. Contact us at 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net if you have questions or want a suggested gift list. That's 300-5433 or email harvest.house@hbcguam.net.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Okay, now here we go at Churchill Downs. That means I got 6 furlongs and I'll be crossing the finish line to put an end to another exciting, elucidating, educational episode of Tall Tales. Before I get to Ron McNench, I do want to also tell you what KUAM said. And KUAM ran the entire Moneca Florist extravaganza. You would think that Moneca was the only one who had anything to say. And then at the very end of the article, as the caption for a picture of one of the guys that works at EPA, you will find this. Guam EPA will not dispute DOD safety termination and the handling of unstable waste materials such as unstable World War II munitions and explosive materials, and will continue to work with the operators of the OBOD unit. So they're not. They say the DOD is right. That's it. This is the EPA, and it's buried. This one sentence. It's a caption of a picture.
The Post, I think, was the only one that actually gave a voice to both sides, or at least the issue. Because the PDN was kind of...
but see, Jose, this is not both sides. This is the referee.
That's... Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
The referee says, We don't dispute the DOD safety determination in the handling of these things.
Who the judge told that is the person who's going to be giving the
ruling.
The ruling.
Yeah. But this is not, it's not anywhere near as dramatic. So this is classic, once again, systemic racism. Moneca, okay, you go out and cover this hearing, about 80% of the story, Moneca Flores, and then sneak in this guy Moore kind of at the end. Pay no attention to EPA. No sense calling, no sense reaching out to EPA to see what they have to say about it. Classic gaslighting. Okay, let me see what Ron wants. He wants to talk about, he wants to talk burn pits first, and then he wants to talk about the briar patch. Ron, just don't set the briar patch on fire.
Hey, Havade Senator, Havade Guam. Yeah, I was at the hearing yesterday on the burn pits, but it was a little bit crowded, and I had a class coming up and stuff, so I wasn't able to stay there. The administrator that was dealing with this particular question for the Guam EPA, his name's Roland Gutierrez. He's very competent, very professional, and he's quite good at what he does. But I was talking to Ray about this. What do folks expect to happen if we can't dispose of unexploded ordnance here?
Well, I told you, Ray. I told you, Ron, during when I was reading that story, if the ordnance has to remain in place, it will stop the military buildup. Better to have duds and unexploded bombs all over the island than to have Camp Bloss get finished.
More than that, every other street corner has unexploded ordnance on it here. I remember just 4 or 5 years ago near Bank of Hawaii in Agana, a major 500-pound bomb, they dug it up nearly intact and had to dispose of it. And the military does it for free. They don't. I don't even think they charge us anything for helping us with that mission.
Yeah.
Can we imagine what would happen if they stopped helping us?
But once again, Ron, you're talking about red rice. You're talking about orange rice. And Moneca and Sabina and all of the rest of them will tell you that the rice is red. It's the narrative that counts, not the facts, not the truth, not what's really going on, not what, the smart thing to do is. It's the agenda.
Right. I got the packet yesterday. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, and I wasn't able to testify because of the time. But I think that the public, here's another thing, and I don't want to sound negative or pejorative. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to hurt anybody's feelings, Senator, because, I'm under that gun right now. I got to watch what I have to say.
And I got to ask you, how are you coming out with your treatment plan, Ron?
Yeah, I know. I'm working on it hard. Maybe I need your advice on it, Senator. And I think you could actually give me good points on it.
I used to have a copy of Mao's Little Red Book back in the day when Americans couldn't buy it. I bought it in Phnom Penh. And I think what you need to do first is what the commies would call self-study, and find out where you've deviated from the party line out there at the university.
Maybe John Locke is better for me. I hate to say, it just drives me crazy sometimes. But here's a question I have for you, Senator. I don't want to sound negative or pejorative. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to get anybody upset with me.
Well, then I'm going to hang up on you, Ron. If that's what those are the rules, then we don't want you calling anymore.
I don't have all that much faith or confidence the folks writing these bills really understand these bills.
Well, in the case of this one, either they don't understand or they understand too well. That almost all of the cultural and environmental arguments that you hear are really anti-military, anti-U.S., pro-separatist, and the environmental and cultural stuff is pretextual. It's not actual. It's just pretextual.
But Senator, there was a laboratory case for Guam in the last election between Jim Moylan and Judy Wampat. Jim Moylan was pro-U.S., pro-military. He was let everyone vote in the political status election, make a democratic community here and for everyone. And he contrasted nicely with a lot of these other kinds of views.
And he skunked Wampat. And, conventional wisdom would have said, oh, she's a legacy candidate. She's been the speaker. She's this. I don't think, but Moylan skunked her. And the takeaway from that right now, Ron, is that the future of the Republican Party is named Moylan. James Moylan and Doug Moylan.
If they want to run again against these types, they have to do the same thing Moylan did.
Yeah, Moylans.
The Moylans did.
Moylans did or are
Be
going
specific.
to do. Yeah.
Maybe the Moylan method. How about that? That would be,
that's good.
The alliteration thing you mentioned earlier, which I loved. Now, there is one other thing. In Attorney General Doug Moylan, also very strong pro-U.S., conservative family values, all of the similar things that I think rang with people here. And there's something to that. I guess that's and I don't want to get in trouble by claiming I'm trying to help anybody's election, but it's just a general observation. But I do want to say, Senator, I do greatly appreciate you sharing the Fire Foundation letters and also the other insightful commentary you had on the First Amendment and just how important it is. Of all of the things, we should be able to talk and have people disagree with us or say things that other people don't like, and that makes people think. When people say things we disagree with, that makes us think. And when we only feel we can agree only all the time, we stop thinking. And so the First Amendment absolutely is so important.
No question about it, Ron. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at the rules of engagement for tall tales. And one of the items in the rules of engagement, caveat, look for provocative content on tall tales. Tall Tales thrives on disagreement. This whole stuff about, we should all try to get along, we should work together. That is not productive. That's not where critical thinking lives. And without critical thinking, what you wind up with is, my sermon on gaslighting today. If you don't have the ability to engage in critical thinking, so right now, Ron, you are the avatar for free speech, critical thinking, etc. And I'm hoping that you'll use this to its maximum effect, and that after that, the next thing we'll be looking at will be Ron McNinch, the movie. I gotta say goodbye, Ray. I'm Ray.
Thank
Ron.
you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you
Ron.
so much. All right,
Let's go, Brandon.
Is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Supercell storms strafe the south. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. 20 tornadoes reported since late yesterday across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama.
There's an abundance of energy within these massive, strong storms. 1.5 million now under warnings. Things have really amplified in terms of some of these storms.
Meteorologist Marissa Torres at Fox Weather. Some homes have been damaged in Mississippi. A sheriff's deputy telling Fox News in one case,
the roof was actually lifted off of the house, twisted 180 degrees and dropped back down on the home.
So far, no reports of injuries, but tornado watches continue for the next several hours in parts of Mississippi and Alabama. Defense attorneys say they will appeal the conviction of Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes and co-defendant Kelly Meggs on seditious conspiracy charges for the Capitol riots.
We feel like that we presented a case which showed through evidence and testimony that Mr. Rhodes did not commit the crime of seditious conspiracy. There was no evidence introduced to indicate that there was a plan to attack the Capitol.
Defense attorney Ed Tarpley, 3 other co-defendants were found not guilty on the seditious conspiracy charge, but all 5 were convicted of interfering with official government business. The Senate has passed a bill to write same-sex and interracial marriage rights into federal law.
This is about families who want to be sure they can have peace of mind, to know that there won't be a change in a Supreme Court case that would devastate their lives and would unravel their financial arrangements, their family decisions, their adoptions, their visitation rights.
Ohio Senator Rob Portman, one of a dozen Republicans